In a world divided by headlines that speak only of rich nations and poor nations, there exists a vast middle countries that rarely make global news, yet hold some of the most revealing stories about modern development. Places where the electricity stays on, where streets are busy and alive, where food markets overflow with color and scent, and where people live with a blend of opportunity and hardship that doesn't fit neatly into the labels most of the world uses. These are the so-called second world countries, a term often misunderstood, often misused, and almost always oversimplified. But behind the phrase lies a complex reality, one shaped by history, by geopolitics, by economic struggle, and by the quiet resilience of millions of people building their lives in between extremes. To understand these nations, we must begin with the evolution of the term itself. Once born out of Cold War divides, Second World originally described countries aligned with socialist or communist blocs, but as the world changed, so did the meaning. Today, the term has slipped into everyday conversation to describe something else entirely. Nations that are not extremely wealthy but not deeply impoverished either, countries where infrastructure functions, where cities grow, where people work, dream, and innovate, even while facing persistent economic challenges. These places defy stereotypes. They are neither the glittering skyscraper capitals of the richest nations nor the crisis-ridden landscapes often associated with the world's poorest economies. Instead, they represent the global middle, diverse, dynamic, sometimes unstable, often underestimated. As we explore this modern definition, we begin to see the patterns that shape life within these societies. Their economies may not dominate global markets, but they are far from stagnant. Their governments vary widely. Some are stable democracies, others hybrid systems balancing old powers with modern reforms. Their cities offer vibrant culture, functioning transport networks, expanding industries, and steadily improving living standards. At the same time, inequality continues to carve visible lines across their landscapes. Rural areas can lag far behind booming urban centers, wages may not stretch far enough for comfort, and political systems frequently face pressure from both progress and discontent. Yet despite these contradictions, second world countries form the backbone of the world's future growth. With expanding populations, rising middle classes, and increasing global influence, they are becoming the new engines of cultural, economic, and demographic change. Their challenges are real, but so are their opportunities. Their histories are complex, but so are their destinies. And in this 20-minute journey, we will look beyond outdated labels to understand what life in these nations truly looks like today, their struggles, their ambitions, and the surprising ways they are reshaping the global landscape. Today, when people casually say second world country, they are usually trying to describe a place that sits somewhere between rich nations and the poorest parts of the world. But the real meaning is more complicated. The term was never originally about wealth. It was a Cold War label, used to describe states aligned with the communist bloc, nations like the Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and parts of Asia. But after the Cold War ended, that definition lost relevance. The world's political map transformed, economies shifted, and the once rigid divide between capitalist and socialist nations faded. The old classification scattered into history, leaving behind a phrase that people still use, though not in the way it was intended. Today, Second World has become shorthand for countries with developing economies, functioning institutions, growing infrastructure, yet still facing significant social or economic challenges. These nations do not have the vast wealth of the most developed states, but neither do they suffer the deep instability associated with the poorest regions. Instead, they exist between extremes: economies on the rise, cities expanding, populations adapting to rapid modernization. Understanding the true meaning requires examining how these societies work, their strengths, their weaknesses, their diversity. They include nations with modern highways, strong industries, educated populations, and major global presence, yet where wages may remain low, inequality persistent, and political systems under pressure. They are not a single category, and not a uniform group. They stretch across continents, cultures, and histories. And to understand them, one must look past stereotypes and outdated labels, recognizing that the second world is not a hierarchy but a global middle that defies simplification and demands deeper understanding. Life in these countries is defined by contrasts that exist side by side. A bustling capital city may feature gleaming modern skyscrapers, internet cafes filled with young people, public transport systems that run efficiently, and neighborhoods known for nightlife, art, and food. Yet only a few hours away, a rural community might still rely on outdated infrastructure, face unreliable electricity, or experience shortages in healthcare and education. This middle band of nations is a world of uneven development where progress is real but not uniform. In many of these countries, people enjoy a level of freedom, movement, and economic activity that places them far ahead of the world's least developed regions. Supermarkets are full, restaurants crowded, streets busy with commerce. The internet is widely used for work, entertainment, and communication, often at rates higher than expected. At the same time, wages may not match the rising cost of living, public services may struggle to keep up with growing populations, and political tensions often simmer beneath the surface. These contrasts create societies that feel both modern and developing at the same time, a dual reality experienced daily by millions. This unique position shapes people's attitudes: cautious optimism, ambition blended with frustration, hope mixed with uncertainty. To outsiders, these nations may seem chaotic or inconsistent, but to those living within them, they are dynamic environments where change is constant, where opportunity and struggle coexist, and where the future feels open, energetic, and unpredictable. Life in the global middle is not defined by stagnation but by transition, a continuous movement towards something better, even if the pace is uneven. Economically, Second World countries are defined by potential. Many have rapidly growing industries, expanding manufacturing bases, and increasing influence in global trade. Foreign companies often invest heavily in these markets because labor is affordable, populations are large, and demand for goods continues to rise. Their cities act as engines of growth, hubs for technology, finance, services, and creativity. Yet economic progress often sits atop fragile foundations. Middle-income nations face challenges that wealthy countries resolved decades earlier. Industrial output may be strong, but innovation capacity might lag behind. Jobs exist, but wages remain low compared to global standards. Housing development accelerates, but affordability becomes a growing crisis. Economic expansion brings opportunity, but also inflation, rising debt, and increasing inequality. Many Second World countries depend heavily on a few major industries: tourism, oil, manufacturing, mining, or agriculture, making them vulnerable to global price changes. When the global economy slows, these nations feel the impact quickly and deeply. Corruption, bureaucracy, and political instability can weaken markets and discourage investment. Infrastructure may be improving rapidly, but uneven planning leads to traffic congestion, pollution, and strained public services. Yet despite these challenges, economic growth rates in many of these nations often surpass those of wealthy countries. Middle-income populations are expanding, consumer markets are booming, and small businesses thrive in ways that reveal an economy buzzing with life. The economic story of Second World countries is therefore not one of failure or stagnation. It is a story of transition, of societies moving from survival to stability, from limited opportunity to expanding ambition, navigating pressures that come with development while pushing forward toward prosperity. One of the most misunderstood realities about these nations is the level of functionality they offer. To someone who has never visited, phrases like developing world may conjure images of disorder or collapse. Yet the truth is far more complex. Many Second World countries have public transit networks that run smoothly, roads that connect major regions effectively, and energy systems that power millions of homes, businesses, and industries. Buses, trains, and metro systems transport thousands daily. Airports are modern, busy, and connected to international hubs. Hospitals exist in abundance in major cities, schools operate reliably, and digital infrastructure enables online banking, e-commerce, and social media at massive scale. In city centers, life feels fast, dynamic, and increasingly modern. People commute to offices, universities, and shopping districts. Cafes and restaurants are full. Technology is everywhere: smartphones, digital payments, online work. Crime exists, as it does everywhere, but daily life is not dominated by fear or breakdown. At the same time, this functionality varies greatly between regions. Rural areas may experience power interruptions, limited access to medical care, or insufficient transportation. Urban growth sometimes outpaces planning, leading to overcrowded neighborhoods and pressure on resources. Yet what defines Second World nations is not the absence of functioning systems, but the unevenness of them. The infrastructure works, often impressively but not everywhere, not equally. And this uneven development is part of what makes these societies so complex. They are nations where success and struggle coexist visibly, where daily life reflects both progress and the challenges of sustaining it. Political systems in these countries defy simple classification. Some are stable democracies with regular elections, active political parties, and lively public debate. Others operate under hybrid models mixing democratic processes with centralized authority, strong executive power, or lingering influence from older political structures. Many have institutions that function effectively but face pressure from corruption, bureaucracy, or rapid population growth. In these environments, governments walk a delicate line between modernization and tradition, between reform and stability. Citizens often expect better services, more transparency, and greater economic opportunity. At the same time, political leaders must balance domestic expectations with global pressures from trade relationships to geopolitical alliances. These dynamics create societies where public trust can fluctuate rapidly. Protests may erupt over economic inequality, inflation, or political controversies. Yet the same countries frequently experience long periods of stability, continuity, and growth. One of the defining features is that governance is not collapsed, it is present, functional, and often improving, even if slowly. Government services exist and operate, though not always efficiently. Laws are enforced, though unevenly. Institutions evolve, facing the constant tension between old systems and new demands. The political story of Second World countries is not one of chaos but of complexity, a balancing act shaped by history, culture, and the pressures of modernization. Perhaps the most defining internal challenge is inequality. In major cities, high-rise apartments overlook informal settlements. Luxury malls stand not far from crowded markets. Public transport may be modern, while rural villages still lack paved roads. This divide is not simply economic, it is geographical, historical, and structural. Urban centers attract investment, technology, education, and opportunity. Rural regions often rely on agriculture, seasonal work, and remittances from relatives who have migrated to the cities or abroad. As a result, young people frequently leave the countryside, accelerating urbanization and placing additional pressure on city infrastructure. At the same time, governments in these nations are investing heavily in rural electrification, road expansion, and regional development. Progress is real, but uneven. In many places, inequality is visible not only in income but in access to education, healthcare, clean water, and digital connectivity. Yet within this challenge lies a powerful force for growth. The movement of people from rural to urban areas contributes to industrial expansion, rising consumer demand, and the growth of a new middle class. The urban-rural divide is therefore both a source of tension and a driver of transformation shaping the identity and future of these nations. One of the strongest misconceptions about Second World countries is that life there is restrictive or limited. In reality, many offer vibrant cultural freedom, nightlife that rivals major global cities, cafes and restaurants full of students, artists, and professionals, open social spaces, and lifestyles that blend tradition with modern influence. People drink, gather, socialize, create music, express opinions, and live with a level of personal freedom that often surprises outsiders. Street culture thrives from food stalls to festivals, from art districts to sports communities. Family networks remain strong, creating social safety nets that support individuals through economic uncertainty. At the same time, cultural identity plays a central role in daily life. Local traditions mix with global trends, creating unique blends of language, fashion, food, and music. Social media is widespread, influencing everything from news consumption to business, activism, and entertainment. The result is a dynamic cultural landscape, energetic, expressive, and constantly evolving. These societies are not trapped in the past. They are actively rewriting their identities in real time, mixing old values with new aspirations. Far from being culturally stagnant, they are often among the most creatively vibrant places in the world. Education in Second World countries is undergoing dramatic transformation. Primary and secondary schooling is widely accessible, and university enrollment is rising at unprecedented rates. Young people increasingly pursue degrees in engineering, medicine, business, and technology, contributing to a growing class of educated professionals. But challenges remain. Some schools suffer from overcrowding or lack of resources. Quality varies between regions, with urban schools often far better equipped than rural ones. Teachers may face low salaries, heavy workloads, and insufficient training. Yet despite these obstacles, progress is undeniable. Literacy rates continue to rise. Vocational training expands to meet the demands of modern industries. International universities partner with local institutions, bringing global standards to developing education systems. Human development is not merely about schooling, it also involves healthcare, nutrition, and social mobility. Many second-world countries have significantly improved life expectancy, reduced infant mortality, and expanded access to medical services. The growing emphasis on human development is reshaping these societies from within, preparing the next generation for a world where knowledge, innovation, and adaptability matter more than ever. If there is one area where second-world countries leapfrog expectations, it is technology. Mobile connectivity is widespread, often more accessible than in wealthy countries. Digital payments are standard. Online businesses flourish. Social media use is massive and influences everything from politics to entertainment to commerce. Startups emerge rapidly, taking advantage of young populations, lower operational costs, and growing consumer markets. Tech hubs rise in major cities, creating ecosystems of innovation that attract both local talent and foreign investment. This digital leap allows these nations to skip older stages of development. Instead of landline infrastructure, they go straight to mobile networks. Instead of brick-and-mortar banking, they adopt digital payments. Instead of physical marketplaces, e-commerce thrives. Technology becomes a tool not only for convenience but for empowerment, allowing individuals to access education, healthcare, business opportunities, and information previously out of reach. Yet the digital divide persists, especially between urban and rural areas. Connectivity may be strong in cities but limited in remote regions. Still, the overall trajectory is upward. Technology is accelerating change, enabling these societies to integrate more deeply into the global economy and reshape their futures in ways impossible just a generation ago. On the world stage, these nations increasingly influence global politics, trade, culture, and diplomacy. They are vital partners in international agreements, manufacturing hubs for global industries, key suppliers of energy, minerals, and agricultural products, and rapidly growing markets for international brands. Their cities host conferences, summits, and cultural festivals that attract global attention. Their populations, often young and expanding, represent the future of global consumption, workforce growth, and innovation. These nations also play critical roles in regional stability, acting as buffers, bridges, or emerging powers capable of shaping geopolitical outcomes. Their votes matter in international institutions. Their economies matter in global supply chains. Their cooperation matters in climate agreements, migration policies, and technological standards. Yet their global role is often underappreciated, overshadowed by the world's richest nations or the world's poorest. But make no mistake, these middle nations form the backbone of the planet's future. As wealthier countries age and populations shrink, the demographic strength, ambition, and dynamism of second-world societies will reshape global power in the decades ahead. The future of these nations is not predetermined. Some will rise to become fully developed economies, joining the ranks of the world's wealthiest nations. Others may stagnate, trapped by political instability, corruption, or economic challenges. But the overall trajectory is one of steady advancement. Young populations, increasing education levels, expanding industries, and growing global connections position many second-world countries for significant progress. The coming decades will test their resilience. Climate change, global economic shifts, technological disruption, and political pressures will challenge their capacity to adapt. Yet history shows that these societies are remarkably capable of change. They have navigated colonialism, political upheavals, economic transitions, and cultural transformation. They continue to grow, innovate, and reinvent themselves. The global middle cannot be dismissed as less developed. These nations hold enormous cultural, demographic, and economic power. Their future is not one of imitation but of self-defined growth shaped by local ambition, global aspirations, and the relentless drive of millions of ordinary people building better lives in a world that rarely fits neatly into familiar categories. The story of the Second World is not about hierarchy, it is about evolution, not about limitation, about potential. And the future they are shaping will influence not only their regions but the entire planet. In the end, the idea of a second world country reveals far more about our outdated ways of categorizing humanity than it does about the nations themselves. These places are not stepping stones between poverty and prosperity. They are living, breathing societies full of contradictions, ambition, struggle, and extraordinary resilience. They are homes to millions who wake up each day determined to build something better, who navigate uneven systems with creativity and strength, who balance tradition with transformation. Their streets pulse with energy, their cities grow upward and outward, and their people carry stories that cannot be reduced to a single label on a political map. The truth is that no nation fits neatly into a box. Every country is a tapestry of different realities, some thriving, some struggling, all changing. And the so-called Second World nations are perhaps the most vivid examples of this complexity, places where progress is real but incomplete, where challenges remain but hope persists, where the future is still being written with every passing day. They are the global middle not because they lack something, but because they are moving forward, upward, unpredictably, and with a momentum that will shape the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. So as we look beyond labels and listen instead to the lives being lived, we find a world far richer than the old divisions ever allowed us to see. A world where ordinary people drive extraordinary change. A world where nations once overlooked are becoming the engines of global growth. And a world where the story of humanity is not defined by what we call each other, but by how we rise, adapt, and keep pushing toward a better tomorrow.